Hey, hi! Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, I'm a film programmer and cultural critic in Toronto, and this is the other thing I do. For 10 years now, if you can believe that. And thank you for your support along the way. My guest for this anniversary episode is Felix-Antoine Duval, an actor I got to know when I programmed the world premiere of Sophie Deraspe's Shepherds at TIFF last year. Felix plays Mathias Lefebvre, a Montreal copywriter who moves to the French Alps after a health scare to reinvent himself as a sheep herder, despite having no training or experience whatsoever for the job. It's a great picture, and Felix is terrific in it. And just last week, he accepted the Toronto Film Critics Association Award for Outstanding Performance in a Canadian Film. Shepherds is playing at the TIFF Lightbox right now, and if you missed it at the festival, or at Canada's Top 10, you should definitely check it out. Felix picked Red Rooms, Pascale Plante's 2023 character study, or maybe it's a thriller, starring Juliette Gariby as Kellyanne, a Montreal model who spends her days attending the criminal trial of Ludovic Chevalier, who's accused of murdering 3 teenage girls and broadcasting the act on the dark web. She meets a younger woman, Clementine, played by Laurie Beban, who is convinced Chevalier is innocent, and the two of them form a strange bond, but we still don't know what Kellyanne thinks, because that's the whole point of Plante's film. It's an exercise in looking into the abyss and trying to figure out what the shadows are telling us. I can see why Felix loves it. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I knew both of the actresses, Juliette and Laurie. So Laurie was my friend. She's been my friend for quite some years now. We did 2 TV shows together.
Ah.
So one lasted a couple of seasons, and the other one we played some kind of a couple in Who Done It, and so we got to meet. Like, both were shot on the same year, so we knew nothing from each other. We didn't even know who we existed, and then we were like, hey, let's shoot like 2 TV shows together. So so we met in those 2 TV shows. And then Juliette, she was in Saint Narcisse, the Bruce LaBruce's feature film, which was my first feature film ever. And she was cut out of the editing because Bruce really did like the scene a lot, but in the whole thing, it didn't feel necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So she was cut out, but that's how I got to meet with her. And then ever since, we've been crossing paths through mundane events and movie premieres and stuff like that. So yeah, how did I first come to see it? I remember coming back from shooting Shepherds, coming back from France, and kind of debriefing the whole experience with my agency and here in Montreal. And I just like that, I could see here and there, I would see the movie, like the movie poster on Facebook, and I'd see the two actresses in the movie, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, they shot together. Okay, they did a movie. Okay, Fantasia. So, okay, but I was so focused on finishing the movie that I had to I didn't give it much more thought. And then when I was debriefing, I was back in Montreal, debriefing the movie, and just like that, my agent just tossed away that line. Yeah, oh yeah, Red Rooms, it's so good, but like really hammering the words, and that was an echo that I usually go for, meaning that I'm rarely the first to discover a TV show, because there are so many. Maybe I could try. I guess I think I could try. That could be an interesting exercise. But I tend to listen to the whole, zeitgeist. I listen to people talking, and then when I hear some kind of an echo that becomes recurring, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch that stuff. So The Office, um, the most recent example would be Succession, which I'm binging right now. And yeah, and so I heard that from my agent, like Red Rooms, it's so good. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, you should watch it, it's good. No, no, it's so good. Like time slows when you talk about it. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll watch that. And I went to the Cinéma du Parc in Montreal, and I had no idea what the movie was about. I hadn't read. I think I might have watched the trailer, but I'm not sure. But I know that I hadn't seen anything. I hadn't wasn't spoiled anything. I didn't read much about the movie at all. So I was a total virgin to what was about to unfold. And that is, I mean, when I talk about the movie, I try not to say too much. I'm just like, please just watch it. Just go for it because you won't be sorry, really. Yeah.
Yeah, we get to explode it open now, which is fun. But yeah, I mean, generally, I will set it up with the most vague ways when I was explaining it to people, when I was telling people about it. And I think the problem is in selling it that when you describe it, it sounds like every other movie. It sounds like 100 other films, or every episode of Criminal Minds, or whatever else you would compare it to. All the serial killer exploitation stuff that came out and has been coming out for decades, since the 80s, really. And it's unique because the way I finally figured out how to pitch it was by telling people it was about obsession.
Mm.
And that means it could be anyone's obsession. Like by not talking about exactly what it's about and who the subject of the obsession is, that got people to say, "Oh, that sounds interesting," instead of, "Oh yeah, I know what that's about." And so tell me, what was the experience of sitting through it? Did you go with anyone? Were you by yourself?
I was by myself.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that could have been a fun experience, like a first date, like, hey, let's go watch this. But no, that did not happen. No, I was on my own, and um, I remember I've seen it 3 times now, and every time I watch it, I'm like, it's so um well written first, like the structure, the way you just it feels logical actually. um I've seen this. I don't know what was the writing well, I kind of know a bit about the writing process, but I've heard this, the documentary called Ennio, about Ennio Morricone, um which came out in like 2 years ago, two,
I think
three
so,
years
yeah.
ago. Yeah. Um, at the very end, Morricone goes like, "Yeah, when you're writing music and you're really into the zone, um, you have the feeling is much more as if the music is writing you, so it feels logical, you know, and that's how." The movie, like the whole beginning, this whole first scene in the courtroom, it feels so logical. Like this is super it's a super sensitive subject topic, like a matter,
Mhm.
and it is you kind of slide slowly into it, just like you should be brought into it, as you feel like you're part of the jury. It's really the judge first talks, and then the lawyers talk, and it's basically the director talking to the audience. And that's at some point the camera is in the jury, and you feel part of the jury. And this whole first sequence is so beautiful. It's so it's mesmerizing. Yeah, it's hypnotic. And you can't, you know that you want to know more. You know, I've worked in mostly in Quebec TV stuff, and I've been really lucky because I've been called to work on killer projects, but working in Quebec TV for the past 10 years, um, you know, you see the strength and the weaknesses or things we could, okay, that could be improved. And I think something that's a little bit um, repetitive or too, it feels just a little bit too recurring to me is the what happened? Oh my God, what happened? Oh my, what we lost. There's something it places as a as the a member of the audience, I'm most of the time I'm called for empathy towards the characters.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're a, ideally a film is supposed to draw us in and make us identify.
Uh-huh. Most of the time when you watch some TV drama, you already know who you're gonna root for, who's gonna be the bad guy, and who's go the codes are so clear. And what I like about Red Rooms is first you absolutely know what happened. You know the guy is guilty. But what makes it interesting is you have no idea what's gonna happen. And for an hour and 15 minute or so, you have no idea what is happening. And that I thought was so refreshing. I couldn't help but to stare at the screen for the whole time. Who is she? Why? All that stuff. How does she live? And it really made me like this whole ending like kind of Finchery vibe ending with
Mm.
the she basically become a superhero of like she controls the security cameras and she becomes a rogue person or of sort. She already is in some way, but she's even more so. And this final pan on these buildings that they become glitched or I don't know how, but it 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 made me feel so in phase with today, with the zeitgeist, with the era in which we live in. Like it made me feel, hey, we know what's happening. We're watching too. Like it felt really actual in a way. So that yeah, I was like, oh man, that feels so great. Yeah.
The hook for me of the film is simply, what does this person want? Right. And we get nothing. We get no guidance. We are completely alone with her half the time, more than half the time.
Yeah.
She's is she self-destructive? Is she doing something else? And yeah, the way you framed it, it's the Fincher. She is Lisbeth Salander by the end. She's become the girl with the dragon tattoo. It's like an origin
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
except that those books and the movies, both adaptations, are all about the brutalization of women in order to become Avengers, right? Like everything has to be justified by violence. And this is not that. Like this is someone using their skills, their brain, their compulsions for a purpose that only becomes clear to us in the last reel, or in the last 5 minutes, really.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But it looks like self-destruction until it cracks open and we see something else is going on. But that, I mean, just the I'm going to jump ahead to the courtroom confrontation, or the closest thing that this has to a confrontation is when Kellyanne shows up wearing the schoolgirl outfit, that dressed like a victim, to make eye contact with someone she's been watching for all this time, and just the way it's structured, the way that scene plays out, and this is what, fully an hour and a half into the film, I think, at this point. We have been watching the whole movie build to this, and it is a non-event. Nothing happens, but it lands like this incredible, it's like someone threw a grenade into the courtroom. Everyone responds, everyone reacts. She's picked up and escorted out. Obviously, it's a big wrong thing in the moment, but we still don't get to understand her motivation for it. We still don't get to see, which I find absolutely remarkable, that you can stage this effectively the climax of the film emotionally. It's the high point of the film. Other things will happen, and more cathartic things in a weird way, but this is the moment where it all comes to a head. And it just, there's no fallout, which I find absolutely fascinating for us. We are stuck here in this energy of what the hell just happened? What did I see? Why did I see it? And if nothing else, it pulls you forward into the story. I know Max McCabe-Locos a little bit. He did the podcast in the very first year. He picked Sallow. It was a really great episode, and he's he's an acquaintance. He's someone I run into every now and then, and I love his work. But it is so inherently absurd to me that you cast him. He never speaks. I don't even know if Max speaks French at this point. I still don't know. I haven't asked him. I should, but he doesn't have to, right? Like, he's cast for his physicality, for the sense that he could be read either way. He could be harmless and a sad little mouse of a man who's been pulled into this thing, or he could just be the greatest monster in the history of cinema. And the fact that he doesn't react in a way that makes sense in that scene, we in the audience are waiting for him to respond, to pay off in some way. And all he does is an ambiguous thing, this tiny little look and this tiny little wave. Does it mean he's into it? Does it mean he's understands she's trying to play him? Does it mean there's a larger game going on? The film gives us nothing back, which I absolutely love. It is the black mirror that Charlie Brooker is always talking about, where, you look into it and it looks back at you. But it's not even looking back at us. It's just going, okay, what do you think it means? It's like an analyst. It's a psychotherapist. The film is whatever you want it to be until those last few minutes where things sort of clarify.
Yeah.
David Fincher wishes he could do something like this, because he's always telling us how he feels about it. And Plante doesn't do that. There is no sense of direction emotionally. Like, that's badly phrased. It is a beautifully directed film, but it never tells you where to go.
Yeah.
We are responsible for our own response.
Right. Yeah, and that's what makes it moving. I think that's how that climax scene, I remember thinking, oh my God, with these you hear the cries, like, but in super, like, it feels
distorted.
like
Yeah.
yeah. And I remember thinking, whoa, this is that look. This is actually this is the last thing that the victims ever saw. And I felt it felt so cringy, it made me even more uncomfortable. I was like, I don't know, I was like torn, like torn apart from the inside. I was both terrified and I felt empathy and sadness, and it's so strong, that moment. And that exchange of
The looks, when they trade looks.
the looks. I had a talk with Pascale yesterday. Yeah, I called him up. I was like, "Hey, I'm about to do this podcast, someone else's movie, and I just want to have as much information as possible." And he did tell me something really interesting about the looks, the way we look at the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Said this movie's gonna work, like, when crafting the whole thing. He said, "Yeah, we really needed the public to look at Kellyanne, the lead character, the way Kellyanne looks at the killer." And that's pretty much how we look at him. Like, what is he gonna do? You know, when he shows up in court the first time we see it, she looks at him, and we look at him, and we try to decipher, is he the one? Is he? We're fascinated, you know, just like she is, and then we're fascinated by her because it's a pretty girl, but why is she there? You can't stop. It's such it feels like a never-ending well, and I think that's kind of how it felt, um, writing it, writing the screenplay, because Pascal did tell me that he was writing this movie uh, back in 2021. So during COVID pandemic, first, second, third wave, I
Mm.
can't recall, but it he did feel like at some point, he read a lot about it. He did mention that he did not watch those snuff content, because he mentions here that he in the book, like the screenplay, um, he mentioned in his introduction that he needed to keep his soul intact, or he didn't want to stumble on some material that was, oh, that one was too much. He says,
Yeah.
yeah, like sanity, like mental health, and to remain stable is way underrated in arts, as he writes it in the book.
I
I,
agree. Yeah, that's something that comes up a lot, actually. The sense that we've all swallowed this illusion that you need to punish yourself to create art, or destroy other people to capture that performance.
right.
Don't agree. Don't agree.
No,
Sometimes,
no, me
good
neither.
people can make good art.
Yeah, of course. But he did mention that it got to him. Like he needed some fresh air
Mm.
after that. Like it felt uh it got to him to write about this. But hey, thanks for I can only say thanks. Thank you, Pascal, for that martyr exercise. I don't know how to call that, but yeah, that was
Self flagellation, I suppose. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Um
there's something very Catholic about that. I think about punishing yourself to see the truth.
oh right.
Um,
Yeah.
but
And
the and Kellyanne is punishing herself as well in a way we never fully understand. In like she's removed everything about herself by the time we meet her. She's like her routine is mechanical. It felt like military training in some ways. Like do the exercises, do your workout, play poker, fund this thing, whatever it is. Like she's removed herself from all human contact, more or less. She's removed herself from emotion. She's removed. I don't even know if this is where she regularly lives. It feels like she's just inhabiting the space
yeah.
of that condominium because it's as generic an alien as any film set. It's sparsely decorated. She has computers, but I don't see anything personal about anything that's there.
Everything feels contained. Everything feels it's so clean. Nothing, you can't see anything, but you barely see furniture. It's man, the building of that movie is incredible. Another thing that uh, Pascal told me about, like this whole idea of actuality, like to feel actual. Um, he did mention that today to feel you, it's really long to make a movie.
Mm-hmm.
They did this movie in no time, by the way. Like it was a miracle because they were accepted at Sodec and Telefilm. Like they got financed right away on first application, and then they were able to shoot. They shot this in 23 days. We did Saint Narcisse in 22 days, and I can tell you that's not fun. I mean, you need way more time to do your stuff.
God, you were playing twins.
Yeah, I was.
That's
Yeah. More on that later. But he did mention like to remain actual, he almost needed to go sci-fi. And he was talking about this scene where they're discussing AI when they when Kellyanne and Clementine are they're eating pizza and they're talking about so she talks about her personal assistant and she says that she tuned I don't know she updated the settings to make her fit the way she wanted to and that when Pascal was writing this scene it felt not immediate, like it was some distant future, not
oh
so,
right, like not fully possible yet.
yeah. And now it's everywhere.
Yeah, it does feel a little science fictional, doesn't it? I mean, even the way it's presented is David Cronenberg does something similar in The Shrouds, where he has this animated personal assistant who speaks to Vincent Cassel's character, but doesn't really do anything more than set appointments and tell him where to go.
Mhm.
It's the illusion, it's the thing that we want AI to be, that it will really be listening to us rather than just looking at the words we use and making sure that they mean what it thinks it means. But here, I mean, it's as inscrutable as Kellyanne is, which I think is great. Like Guinevere and Kellyanne have conversations, and we still learn nothing about either of them, except
Yeah.
that they're using each other.
Hmm. Interesting. I think we could go for that. We could keep talking about this for an hour, but I really want to talk about the acting performance.
Please, yeah, it's
Um,
remarkable.
I don't know Juliette a lot, but she seems to have this um overfusing energy. She has lots of energy. She could portray like I don't know, so much things because she's so special looking. Like currently I think she shaved her eyebrows or she tainted them
Oh, she
white.
might have bleached them. I've seen some images of Chloe Robichaud's new film, and she seems to be. I don't actually know what it is she's playing, but she seems very alien to everyone else in the film, and it's clearly a choice. I just don't know why.
Uh, and it strikes me how in the movie she's actually super grounded. And that's always fascinating. I mean, you have lots of we had couple of uh performance where, troubled child, problem child and tough kids that you can't get your grasp around them, you can't control them.
Mhm.
It's just as fascinating when you to create such a mesmerizing performance by being super grounded. It's
Yeah,
the opposite, actually. Both are super cool, but when you manage to do both, it's like so fascinating. Suddenly, I don't know, you feel drawn. Everything in this movie feels like you need to look closer. It's so, oh man, I love this movie. Even Laurie in her performance, she you know, she's really she's a tiny person. She's all small and she looks like a I don't know. Every time I see her, I'm like, ah, hi, how are you? And stuff. And she's super cute and all. But in this movie, she's everything that could be like made ugly about her is made. Like her hair or you don't recognize her. She seems like she's had a bad sleep for like yeah, and she goes in those weird zones as well. She really went for it, and they did win an award at the Gala des Iris, yeah, which is the Quebec Cinema Award
Mhm.
ceremony, and both actresses won, so I was super glad. Yeah,
Yeah, well deserved. I mean, it's they're both doing tremendous work. It's yeah, again, it didn't have to be this well made, but it everything about it is working at
uh,
that peak level.
yeah, and I think I'm just I'm just going through last bits of ideas, but this whole notion of empathy, to have empathy, I think you're brought, like she puts the empathy aside. Kellyanne puts her empathy aside to go through the whole thing. And that's really, really hard to do. And that calls maybe us to put it aside, not to forget it. We have to remain good shepherds all the time, but we just need to to know how to show teeth, and to just understand how these guys are doing because they don't have any trouble putting their empathy aside, for they have none. So we have to understand that how that works and how they talk. And then okay, there. Yeah.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I wrote about Gladiator 2, which arrived on 4K from Paramount and is a reference quality presentation of a movie that's not quite what it could have been. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link at the Semcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. I think that's the thing I was talking about earlier, the Canadian thing, where we have learned to, our actors can be recessive, they can pull back and it makes you look closer. It, instead of repelling the gaze, it pulls us in because we want to know why we can't understand what we're
Mhm.
seeing.
Yeah.
A little shorthand there that works beautifully to draw us in. And then I realized, of course, that pretty much everyone in this film is doing that on some level, except for Clementine, who is big and um, immediately registers to us as deluded,
Yeah.
but we're still interested in why. So
Uh-huh.
she, like the fact that she is so effusive and quick tempered
Yeah.
uh, when talking about Chevalier and how she knows he's innocent. And there are, I mean, there are hundreds of women who have over history have fallen for or believed in the innocence of clearly guilty, horrible people. And I'm sure some men as well. Like we're seeing that more on social media than anything else, where awful people defend awful people. But here it's this. She seems genuinely innocent in a way that is distressing. Like she, for whatever reason, she has done this. She has put herself on this journey to defend someone and won't listen to any other arguments, any other conflicts. And her relationship with Kellyanne becomes maybe the most interesting thing in the movie for a little while, just because we need to know what Kellyanne wants. Like, is she
Hmm.
grooming this girl? Is she trying to save her, or is she trying to set her up? Or what purpose does the relationship serve?
Hmm.
And again, both of them are just so interesting in the dynamic of one person giving nothing back to the camera and the other person giving everything.
Yeah. Oh, good point. And we actually, yeah, that you're right. We, as an audience, we actually feel, um, we identify to her in the way that we don't know what Kellyanne is about, and
Mm.
we need to know more about her. But about the arc of the characters, they have magnificent arcs as well. It's so effective. Pascal told me that he wanted Clementine to be this really annoying person in the beginning, and then you're drawn to her, and you s- you remain you stand your ground. In the end, you're like, no, I would never go there. But you're like, how do you come to, we know, she's at the very she's at the top of the spectrum of presumption of innocence, but like to a point where you're like, okay, it's way too abusive. Like, what have you been into to defend this guy? with such anger and stuff.
Yeah,
And
it speaks to something in her history that we're never allowed to understand, right? But it's so clear that there's something motivating her.
yeah, and you were talking about the Maxwell, the guy who plays the Chevalier.
Mhm.
So you know this actor, right?
Max, yeah, Max McCabe Locus. He's a filmmaker as well, and he keeps showing up in odd roles because of, I mean, he looks very eccentric and is capable of doing all kinds of broad comedy or small weird moments.
Huh.
And yeah, he's just an ordinary articulate artist who gets cast in these roles because he looks like that. But here, I mean, he's required to do nothing else, which is even better. Just sit there and be still, and people will put whatever motivations and emotions onto you that they
Yeah.
brought to the theater.
See, in Quebec, we don't know this guy
That's the
at
genius of
all.
it, I think.
Yeah,
That
it's even more efficient. Who is this guy? We've never seen him before, and there's this thing in Quebec. We're such a small market, and we obviously, if there's any justice in this business, is that you gotta be able to make a living out of acting, but you need to keep working, and we get to this strange phenomenon where you have to you recognize undeniably that this is this guy or this is this girl, and but every now and then you get to discover a new face, someone you've never seen before. And I remember seeing a French play, like uh, they brought a play from France to Quebec, and I
I
remember
see.
being mesmerized because I wouldn't be like, oh, what? Oh, that's interesting. He doesn't usually do that. Oh, okay, yeah, she did a great job. But then when watching this play, I was like, wow, I was following all the way, like I was so into the story because I didn't know these guys at all. So it was that refreshing stuff, that a crisp flick of fresh air every time this happens. And that's even more efficient with Red Rooms and the fact that we don't know at all who this guy is. Um, and yeah, oh, we were talking about Clementine. I know that we kind of feel the same way, like this not knowing. We kind of feel the same way about the town she's from in the movie. I mean, I know that town because it's not so far from where I grew up, but I know that this part of Quebec, most of people don't know what happens there because there's basically nothing, there's no touristic attraction.
Oh, right. So there's no reason for people to come and visit.
No, no, the best way to experiment this whole part of Quebec is to know someone who's from there, and he'll bring you to, hey, let's go to uh my family cottage, and to this my friend's sugar shack and stuff.
Right.
But save from that, we this part of Quebec remains a mystery to most people, and they most people in Quebec don't even know where to place it on the map. And that's kind of how Red Rooms feels. That's what the whole movie feels like it's all about. And I mean, I like it, and it made me feel so. It was so refreshing that a Quebec movie would make me feel that way because it was unfamiliar and it was terrifying. And both these, like the only other film that made me feel that way is some is the very original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
Have you seen that?
Oh, God, yes. Sure.
Hey, speak of a masterpiece. That is one. I'm sorry. I've seen it like I think in last fall, like very recently with my most recent eyes, and it's it's a masterpiece. A bit. by mistake. I don't think they were expecting to do something so time
Yeah,
time
resonant perhaps.
yeah. Um, but it's so efficient. It everything feels uncomfortable. Everything feels dirty. Everything feels and yeah, it's super efficient. And um I mean that ending. Wow, this kind of dance of death, dance of madness, and it ends, it cuts there, and you're like, what? This is your ending? There's nothing more. You're leaving me in that state of mind. What the hell is wrong with you? And speak of madness, that's another topic that we don't we talk about being victimized, about you know uh we talk about lots of heavy stuff. We have this, we're able to go there, but very rarely do we talk about madness. Madness. And that's what I think felt so refreshing with this movie, that we talk about it. We get to talk about it. We're able to talk about it. And um I was referring to this what happened. That's a recurring dynamic in the
Mhm.
way we build our dramas. Um, I think on the opposite, like Americans, they usually go for look what's going to happen. Like in House of Cards, you have this he shall remain nameless
Yeah.
here. But say Frank Underwood goes like he talks to Ellen Burstyn. Now let me tell you what's going to happen, Elizabeth. And I was like, wow, this is super powerful. And Red Rooms is none of both, none of them. It's you know what happened, you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know what is happening. It's yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's all about the tension of denial, right? I mean, it's funny you would mention the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it's the complete opposite of what Plant is doing. It is just assaultive. It will not stop screaming at you. And I
Right.
love it. I love that film, and especially watching it with an audience, which is one of the great pleasures. That and Jaws are two films which are perfect engines, and they have attained a certain mythical status, right? So there's always going to be, whenever you see it in a theater, there will always be someone seeing it for the first time who thinks they can get through it by being ironic, and it melts them down. It will not be laughed at, especially Chainsaw. Jaws, I saw once at a midnight screening. There were some drunk guys in the back row trying to laugh along with Robert Shaw's Quint. Every time he said R, they'd say R and be loud and laughing. And then 5 minutes after his first scene, they just stopped because it didn't matter. The movie had them. Like you can't make fun of that character. He is living his truth for whatever reason.
Right.
And Texas Chainsaw, there's always someone who laughs at the hitchhiker until he slashes his arm. And then people lose their minds. And
Mhm.
that is the film, that is the moment in the film where Toby Hooper says, "You're trapped in here with me. I am not going to let any of this be fun." And it
Uh,
just keeps like that shot following the young woman as she walks up to the house for the first time. She's dead. They're all dead. Like they're all doomed. And this film is watching as it happens. It's the predator as much as anybody else in the film is a predator. And
uh,
in Red Rooms, there's that remove, there's a distance. We are studying these characters. We're encouraged to see them as specimens and try to figure out what everything means. And no one is speaking honestly about what their motivations are. I mean, there's only 5 or 6 speaking parts, right? Other than Clementine, who is telling people what she wants, but she herself is deluded about what it is she wants. Kellyanne never reveals anything to anyone she speaks to. She's always keeping everything close. We don't get to understand. The newscasters are the ones telling us the truth, but the truth is mediated because they're relaying it through their own experiences to a camera. There is no one to identify with, which is what I think is so fascinating in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there are the victims and there are the killers. And here we don't know who's who.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and speaking of identifying, Pascal did tell me something really interesting about identifying with characters. He said, "Yeah, to me, to feel uh, to like you identify with the characters, it's really overrated." He just like tossed it all away. It really feels underrated to me. I was like, wow, I just burst into laugh because he's right. I mean, I like to I mean, in some way when you go, I think you have to aim for other stuff because who knows where you could get to identify with these people in a way you never thought you would. Like, say, in The Office, in TV series The Office,
Mhm.
I don't identify, I remember not identifying with any of these guys, and I stopped watching it. And then some people told me, hey, no, you gotta pursue the quest. And I was like, okay, cool. So I started from the beginning, and at some point you get caught in the loop and you watch, and then it's even funnier when you're like in I don't know season three, four, five, maybe even before that. You do identify with these guys or with that trait of character. Oh yeah. Oh wow, that's me. And it feels in French we say to have a yellow laugh. You laugh, but you
An uncomfortable laugh.
yeah, in a sarcastic way, in a sarcastic and uncomfortable, but yet funny way.
Oh, a jaundice laugh, of course. Yeah, the other version of jaundice. In English, it means weak and sickly.
Oh, a jaundice laugh.
Yeah.
So yeah, he Pascal said, yeah, to feel to identify with characters feels kind of overrated. And he also mentions something really interesting. He said he likes for the audience, like he kind of takes for granted that the audience is not stupid. Like he kind of takes for granted that okay, people know the codes of cinema and they've I don't know if they might have maybe they haven't read about it, but they've watched it. Like we've all watched movies.
How to read a film.
Yeah, but then he says, from this point, we play chess now. And yeah, I really like that image. That was so cool.
We haven't really talked about the cinematography, but it is, as you were saying about how to read a film and knowing the language of cinema, it is using our knowledge of what a serial killer movie is against us. I think, like the sense that it is both really beautiful and slick, but also incredibly mundane. Those courtroom scenes look boring. You get the sense that everyone has spent way too much time in there already by the time we get there.
Uh-huh.
It's a great way of keeping us off balance because when we're alone with Kellyanne, it feels like uh, important material is being conveyed to us. There are things that we can't see that we're forced to look closer. But then when she's in the world, she feels very ordinary. Everyone feels very ordinary. Like the Chevalier is not some kind of super villain or monster or genius. I mean, he is a monster if he's done the things that he's accused of doing,
Uh-huh.
but he's not larger than life. There's nothing about him that isn't ordinary. And we're encouraged to see that, which is very much a choice.
Yeah, which enhances the terror
Hmm.
in some way. And yeah, it is being told that he's not much of a he's a pretty much ordinary guy. It is stated loud and clear with this second lawyer who comes and talks about the guy. Like he never even nothing in his behavior suggests that he could be such a monster because he's never even paid any parking tickets.
Right.
Like he's got no unpaid tickets to his record. Um, I think. this whole thing feeling like you said, it feels like everyone's been spending way too much time already. That has to be how it feels to go down this rabbit hole, because
I think so,
there
yeah.
was, yeah, that whole misogyny path. I saw a documentary play about Polytechnique, the tragedy of Polytechnique here in Montreal.
Hmm.
And this guy doing his research, he went on the internet and he said, "Man, I went so far and it never ends. It never ends. You see really creepy stuff and you see, I mean, it's terrible. What I'm going to say is terrible, but I've seen what it takes to cut a throat, but like the bones, he stumbled through that kind of stuff." And yeah, it's some kind of a never-ending well, and it's I think that's how when you mention the spending too much time in there, I mean, that has to be how it feels. I don't think there's an end either to that. You just have to come back. At some point you have to come back. Come back
Yeah.
towards the light,
Or
please.
you don't, right? Or you just get lost forever, which is, I mean, I
Yeah.
think we're seeing that pretty much everywhere right now. That this
Yeah.
is, it feels like we're in the end point of that idea that you can have only the viewpoint that you want and only the thing you're looking for forever if you really commit. And
Uh,
here we are now, all of us in our individual streams, trying to figure out how to pull people back,
yeah.
from going over the waterfall.
Yeah. That's
It's a
become
terribly complicated metaphor.
Yeah, no, I got every bit of it. But it feels like, this feeling of resolving the equation. You feel like that. The movie takes you to, like, from the beginning, you're like, there's a knot you're trying to untangle. There's something to be untangled there. It's quite interesting the way it does entangle. Like Kellyanne has to drop everything she has because she tossed it all away. She gives her picture to these guys.
Mm-hmm.
She remained unknown, but then she gives her picture, and then she blends the her
Oh, she
she
destroys Guinevere. Yeah.
and yet she fights. She has to fight for the missing piece of the puzzle. She has to fight for it. She has to go all the way through to then um give away this information that will resolve the whole thing. That, okay, this is what it took, like, but you have to commit in such a huge level, and that feels really exhausting. Just I feel exhausted just to talk about it. But yeah, that's I don't know, everything in this movie feels mesmerizing.
Yeah, this is what I mean about the feeling that you're watching a soldier. Like this is a military option that she's been on. She's been on this quest way before the movie started, and we're catching up to her in the last mile.
Yeah, she does wake up very early in the morning to be sure that she'll have some place in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
And something just came back to my mind. She's kind of a soldier, and she reminds me a bit of Matthew McConaughey in True Detective.
Oh, like someone who's destroyed by the knowledge of the things they've seen, experienced.
Yeah, someone who feels like I my take on his character is I think he is seeing himself as some kind of an angel who is there to serve this purpose of catching really bad, like rotten, like mad people,
Mm-hmm.
mad people. And in order to do so, you have to go down the road to comprehend, to understand how the clockwork is working. And
So it's a sacrifice in a way, right? A
yeah,
sacrifice of self in order to right a larger wrong.
Yeah, and of course this get intertwined with fascination, and yeah, it's so complex, so cool.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you chose it. And this brings us around to the question that closes out the podcast, which is I've been I don't know if it applies yet, but is there anything usually with a film this fresh it doesn't apply yet, but is there anything of Red Rooms that you have used, drawn on, thought about? Is there something you would want to incorporate into your own work going forward?
Um,
There's not a lot of it in Shepherds. I mean, in Shepherds, he's an open book. We're watching someone externalize himself at every turn. You're not asked to hide anything as an actor in that film. It's very immediate.
yeah, it's out there pretty much. Um, well, there's is, I mean, on a technical point of view,
Sure.
as an actor, there are these common points that I could state, such as the arc. You know, Sophie, and when we started shooting, actually prior to the shoot, Sophie said, "Yeah, I'd like to have to see an evolution in the body. It'd be cool." She didn't. I mean, it's not something that I had to do because the whole thing did it for me. I just had to allow myself to be impacted by everything I was going through. That was yeah, I just let it happen. But I think you see that this he's not he's feeling rather uncomfortable in the beginning of the movie with the he doesn't know how to behave with the herd and with the animals and stuff. And at the end, this whole thing is actually crawling on him when he, at the end when he knows how to walk into the mountain, he sleeps there. Uh, yeah, so that I was glad I got to yeah, I thought it was pretty you can feel that. And so the arc, the evolution of the character is super cool. I think it doesn't happen the same way at all. Of course, that's very different, but you do see an evolution, or there's an evolution. There's something I really enjoyed about that. And there's this, in when you get to play for the camera in TV, that's one thing, but in cinema, on both occasions, I got to do it. There were these super emotional scenes where I remember being all out, like crying with tears and stuff, like beautiful emotion, oh, so sensational and stuff. And in both occasions, Bruce and Sophie came to me, "Hey, Felix, yeah, that's too much. Bring it back a little." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So the TV here is much more of a uh, goes for the sensational thing, as the cinema goes for the exact thing. Like you don't need to do that much because the picture is so like the screen is so wide. So you don't need to show that much. You really have to keep it super contained. And I think that Juliette managed to do that. I don't know how. Did she find it? Did Pascal um, did Pascal direct her in that way? It has to be a little, it's teamwork, of course, but knowing a bit of Juliette's energy, that stunned me, and I'm glad that I, like lots of people told me about Shepherds, that my performance was really contained, and I was glad. And even a former classmate did tell me something about my voice, because she remember I would break my voice every time in theater school because I was way too intense.
Hmm.
And she said, "Wow, your voice is so relaxed. How did you were you conscious? Was it the part? Was it the working for camera, like the craft? How did you anyway? So there was something of sort in Shepherds. It's pretty much it, to let yourself being watched. That's something that you first struggle with, but when you catch how to do it, you kind of have to rediscover everything, like this whole thing of being watched on every project that you get to work on, because you don't know, okay, what do I have to give to you? What are you going to come what do I need and do not need to give to you?
Right.
That's
What does the
all.
camera want?
Yeah. And what will work depending of the project of the it's always a you gotta start from scratch all the time, every time.
Okay, last question. Would you want to play a Kellyanne or would you want to play a Chevalier? Like, where do you see yourself in this firmament of thrillers?
Hmm. Killian and Chevalier. Ah, wow. What you got me stunned, because I see so many correlations between the two now that you ask. Because she's first you start thinking that she's insane, right? And you know that Chevalier is, but first you think she's just as insane as he is, but in the end she does the right thing, but you don't really feel like she's cured, or you just feel like she will keep doing so. She might go and try to catch another one. Um, so the question is, I mean, another way to this question was asked. I was asked this question is, would you rather play the good or the bad one?
Yeah. What are your inclinations? What interests you more?
So I got to play both. I really did get to play both. And at some point, like in my early years, early years, speaking as if I was like 80 years old. Um, but I remember coming to a point where I was like, hey, I'm always crying my life. The audience has so much empathy for me. The audience likes me and stuff. And I was like, ain't it, ain't it kind of repetitive? Does it feel? And then I got to play a bad guy and was like, okay, cool. But yet this bad guy had noble intentions. And then came Saint Narcisse with Bruce, this alien, like enfant terrible of Canadian cinema in some way, and he really allowed me. I mean, I was the job was to play a dick. I was like, hey, Daniel, that twin, he's a dick, right? And I, like saying this with, is he is he uh is he dick? And Bruce just said, "Oh, he's totally a dick." Like there was no questions asked. Yeah, yeah, he's totally a dick. And so I mean, that was super interesting in you know, I discovered an energy, and I've been brought to think to wonder and give thoughts about this narcissist thing, trait of character,
Mhm.
because I was told in theater school that I was too clean, too nice, too beautiful, too perfect, too la 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 la. And I was like, okay. And that's a weird thing to be to receive when you're that young, right? Because okay, what do I do with that?
Yeah.
And they were right. The people who told me that in theater school were right, because I some people told me so, just the same thing once I got into the business. I lost some parts because I didn't feel mean enough, or just this tough kid, like this problem child, or stuff. And um, then came that first part with that launched me. It was a TV series called Pour Sarah. Um, Huge success. in Quebec, and um, at some point, we're like a week. I've been shooting for like 3 days, 4 days, I don't know. And the director comes to me, "Hey Felix, your character. We would need to add some." And I was like, "Oh no, no, no! He's not gonna say it. He's not gonna. Please don't say it. We need him to be a little more like he's kind of too clean a bit." And I was like, "Oh shit! Damn it! Again!" I mean, I got the part. I'm here, and now again this direction, and I was like, "Okay, well, what else?" And he said, "I'll let you talk with the author." Okay, cool. So I get a chat with the author, and she says, "No, he's not dirty. He's not. He's a narcissist." I was like, "Okay, do you know what a narcissist is?" And I didn't dare to say no. I just, well, I've heard of it, but I couldn't teach what this word is. And she said, "Yeah, a narcissist is someone who will behave uh, only towards, he will go towards his ambitions, no, like regardless of the others, even if he's harming someone else, if he won't care at all about the others." And I was like, "Okay." And she goes like, "Have you seen that movie with Leo DiCaprio uh that came out recently?" And I was like, "The Wolf of Wall Street?" She says, "Yes." And I go like, "Yeah, not only have I seen the movie, but I have read the novel." She goes like, "Yeah, that's a perfect example of a narcissist." And I'm like, "Okay." And she goes, "Have you seen that movie with Christian Bale that came out like some 15 years ago?" And I go like, "American Psycho?" She says, "Yes." And I go like, "Yeah, not only have I seen the movie, but I've read the book." So I discovered that I had this, without even knowing, I had this tendency to be uh that interest towards those characters. And
Mm.
then came Saint Narcisse, like Narcissus, Saint Narcisse. So I was really bound to 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 go down that road. So I got to give lots of thoughts about these. And for the first time with Saint Narcisse, I really, really fathomed what this whole energy was about and while shooting. And if you ever watch or rewatch Saint Narcisse, I know there's a review somewhere. Critique did write Felix-Antoine is much more efficient in the second twin than he is with the first twin. And I agree with that because under I did understand stuff while shooting. And the first twin, I wasn't yet on my tracks, so I played it kind of close to me, but I'm still I know, well, the audience doesn't have to know it, but I for myself know it. But then the every time we discover the second twin is the moment in the movie where I sit back and I relax and I go, "Okay, now we go." And I think I'm much more efficient in this part because I did understand what it meant not to care about anyone. And it's so satisfying. So to answer your question, I would very much like to go back down that road, or to, just to add some pieces of this, but in such a fashion, say, I mean, we were all in awe at Heath Ledger in The Joker. He was mad, but you couldn't stop staring at this guy because he does, so that
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. I mean, I could feel discovering energies. That's basically what I'd like to go for. No matter if it's bad or wrong. I just wanna discover. this I have a friend of mine, she's in New York. She plays in she plays in Sleep No More at the McKittrick Hotel. And she did mention to me, you're a scientist of the human mind. And I was like, wow, this is one of the most beautiful thing someone ever said to me. And I was like, yeah, that's how it feels. Like it fits with my approach to this job. You're experimenting and then you're sharing the results.
That's what art is too, right? I mean, you are just trying to show people something.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about you, maybe it's about themselves, but it's about something larger than the material. And, it's always about the metaphor. It's always about the story under the story.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my coaches, he goes like, don't play the lines. You're playing the lines right now. Don't play the lines. Play what's under the lines. Don't play the words because we can tell it's not interesting. You gotta, it's what's under it. And just to add on this narcissist experimentation I've been on these past like couple of parts I got to play. Um, I think I have to share my result, but I think we have to love our kids because when you don't, you end up right now with the geopolitical situation that we have right now. So I think you have to love your kids, give give them security, just give them security, and so that they don't feel uh, bound to overwhelm everyone with their personal endless insecurities.
Mm. Yeah, a lot of world leaders out there whose parents didn't pat them on the head after a baseball game.
Right, right.
My thanks to Felix-Antoine Duval, who you can see in Sophie Deraspe's Shepherds, now playing at the TIFF Lightbox. Thanks also to Sophie. She knows what she did. And thanks to all of you for listening to this podcast for 10 years, 10 episodes, or even 10 minutes. It's still my favorite thing to do. And it's nice to know you're all out there. You can find Felix on Instagram at FelixADuval, FelixADuval, all one word. And you can find Red Rooms on a limited edition Blu-ray from Utopia Distribution and from Entr'acte Films in Quebec under its French title, Les Chambres Rouges. It's also streaming on Shudder and AMC Plus in the US and available to rent or buy on various VOD services in the US and Canada. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 41 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get the new booster as soon as you can. I'll see you next week.
Years, man! 10 years! 10 years! 10 years! 10 years!